Yo, what is up, headhunters, executive recruiters, and all around beautiful, beautiful people? This is Headhunters Live coming at you live this beautiful Thursday, October 3rd. And got something very special we're going to announce today. But before I do so, I want to make sure you guys know who we are. 'Cause it's been a while since we've been on here live. My name is David Stephen Patterson. Most people call me DSP. And then right over here, we have my brother from another mother, Neil Lebovitz, the one and only. And then right over here, we have the best looking man in the business, as always, Chris Wessel. What's up, boys?
Hello, David.
October 3rd, it's a big day for Mean Girls fans. Just saying. Just throwing that out there. Maybe you guys haven't seen that movie. It's about 20 years ago.
The musical twice. What's October 3rd?
On October 3rd, he asked me what day it was. October 3rd.
Well, all right. So Neil, let me ask you this: If Chris was a high school girl, would he be one of the mean girls?
He would be a sexy girl.
But I'd be mean. You can be both.
Get kind of weird.
Mean bone in your body. No.
Getting kind of weird, guys. Getting kind of weird. Well, that said, we're gonna get started here pretty soon. We're gonna make an announcement on a brand new program or course that Neil and I are putting together starting tomorrow. It's completely free. And we're going to go through what's going to be included here. And then starting next week, we'll get back to having some guests. But before we do so, if you guys watching this can do me a big, big solid, make sure you like and or love the show. And also, if you can hear me, comment that you can hear us. In fact, comment live if you're watching live and you can hear us. If you're watching the replay, comment replay because we really want to know who's checking us out. All right. So with that said, before we get started, and we can tell you about this new program that's free to everybody, right? And we'll tell you the details here in a second. I do want to talk to you about our sponsors. So if you are a search professional and you're looking to get some recurring revenue in your life, because I know for most search folks, making a placement 1 month and billing a goose egg the next month and billing next month and billing a goose egg the following month, it's stressful. But having temporary workers or contractors or a staff augmentation, whatever you want to call it, but having folks out there, your clients that's billing every single month is going to do a wonder for your bottom line, as well as help you keep all of your hair. I wish Neil would have loved to know about that years ago. But that said, go to backofficenow.com. It is the best back office staffing solutions in the business, because if you try to get into contracting or staff augmentation or staffing yourself, there's a lot of teeth. You got to deal with insurance and you got to fund payroll, and it's a pain in the butt. So they take care of it all. Go to backofficenow.com. Now, in addition, I run a firm called the Digital Headhunter. And we help deploy sales marketing systems for small search firms and independent recruiters that helps you punch above your weight class. And we do it in 30 days or less. And there's a 90-day ROI guarantee. I won't go into a lot of details, but all you have to do to learn about what my offer is, go to the digitalheadhunter.com/build. There's a 10-minute video that explains exactly what we build and why it works. And if it resonates with you, you can use that link to book a call with myself, one of my team members.
And Dave, I see you posted yesterday, and this isn't a setup, but you have some sort of deal ending today that you notified the Hurt Group of. Is that this?
That's right. Else? That's right. No, that's something different. So I have a course called Recession Breaking. Thank you, Neil. I have a course called Recession Breaking, which is a strictly online course. I sell for $497. I have a 40% discount that actually ends today. I've been running the special now for a few days. It's all about how to recession-proof your firm. So it's all about operations, systems, financial management, etc. So if you're looking to become a very efficient machine, which is how you survive recessions, I will have Jaja, who's our assistant. She's in the green room. She will post the link in the comments below. And Jaja, don't forget to post in the discount code. It's break40, and that expires tonight at midnight. All right. Lastly, before we get down to business, let's talk about virtual assistants. So for many of you folks, have a real hard time hiring and training and figuring out how to use virtual assistants. So Chris happens to be an expert in that field. So if you're interested in learning how to use a virtual assistant, Chris can help you navigate those challenges. Go to chriswessel.com. Again, that's chriswessel.com. I believe that redirects to your OnlyFans page, right, Chris?
Yes, it does. There are some free options, but if you want the good stuff, you have to subscribe. Absolutely. All major credit cards accepted.
So go to chriswessel.com. He also takes cash, folks. Go to and your spare change.
It's harder to get it
Chris,
to cash.
Go to chriswessel.com. He'll walk through the process step by step. All right. Now let's get down to business, guys. Neil, I'm excited about this. Neil and I have been talking about this for a while. So for those you don't know, we started a brand new training platform and recruiter-only community where the elite recruiters go to play, called the Syndicate. And it's free to join. You can go to thesyndicate.chat. We have, I think at this point, 50, 60, 70 free agreements, direct hire agreements, retained agreements, NDAs, etc. We have over 100 forms, because I know for most recruiters looking to go out on their own, you don't have agreements, right? We have all the agreements and more there. Tons of free training, tons of premium training, as well as a community of like-minded recruiters who like to kick ass and bill like crazy. So join. It's completely free. And this is where our new foundations training is going to reside. So that said, Neil, I feel like I've been hogging the spotlight here. Tell us about this this program called Foundations, because this actually is based off of an old program that you had back in the day. We've retooled it for the modern era. But why don't you lead us off and tell us a bit about it?
You know what? If you look at it this way, it's a really modern version of those trainings for those of you who have been around a while that you used to buy on DVD. Tony Burns, 30 Steps in the Placement Process.
The cassettes, you open up a little book-like thing and there's a bunch of cassettes in there, or video,
exactly
or whatever. Yep.
Exactly. And it's a modernized version. And we wanted to come up with something that has universal appeal to the Syndicate audience. And this is wonderful. It's the Foundations. It's a new employee boot camp, if you want to look at it that way. Some things might be more advanced than they need, but it teaches them everything from step one, and we'll go through the agenda today, all the way through the end. And there's lots of advanced nuggets in there. And frankly, veterans need to get a slap in the face to go back to the root and the core foundational musts for the business.
100%. And I will say this too. The course is designed to start from the very beginning. So even in the first lesson, we'll be defining what search is, the different kinds of search, staffing, augmentation, contracting, contingency, engage, direct hire, retained, yada, yada. So it's really just a real quick primer of what search is. But as we progress later, and we'll show you the agenda in a moment, but as we progress further, it'll start getting more advanced. So towards the end of the program, you'll see some really advanced stuff. So if you're a veteran, even if you're a veteran, I would suggest attending at least some of the later lessons, possibly some of the first ones if you want to kind of refresh on some basic skills. But even for veterans out there, you're going to be learning some really advanced techniques, particularly later on in the program as we get into advanced selling or what Neil likes to call hypnotic selling. Yeah, but we'll show you we show you the preview here. It's going to be a really great time. Really excited about it, and it is going to be starting tomorrow at 1 p.m. Eastern. We're going to try to keep the training sessions relatively short. Try to keep it about maybe 45 minutes to an hour tops. So you should be able to watch this stuff during lunch. And if you can't make it live, and we will be answering some questions live at the end of each session. And if you cannot make it live, the replay is going to be available forever. So as long as you're a member of the Syndicate, which is free again, go to thesyndicate.chat, you'll have access to the entire course free once it's all in the can. We've filmed all the lessons over the course of 15 weeks. All right.
Now,
so
to join the Foundations training, when you sign up for the Syndicate, and please, everyone, go ahead and do that, even if you're not going to go to the training. Look under the free training section. You'll see the Foundations. Join the space. And that's it. You'll see, is the Zoom link, the webinar link in there, David, yet?
The link should be in the comments. And Judge, don't forget, put in the comments in the Facebook groups, but we're also put in the YouTube comment and put in the LinkedIn comments as well, if you could.
All right. So go to the foundations, join it, and you'll see a link there when we go live tomorrow. And everyone could join. And it's Zoom based, so it'll be really wonderful to be interactive.
Yeah, we may even throw in a few dad jokes while we're at it. So that said, let's check out the agenda. What do you think, guys?
Yep.
All right, let's rock and roll. So let me share my screen here. Hope you guys can see this. Let's check out the agenda. Maybe try to make it a little bit bigger. Let me see if I can do that. And let's get rid of the text on the screen here so we can, there we go, kind of maximize our viewing. All right, so we're going to go through the agenda just so you know what to expect. And keep in mind, this is going to be every Friday at 1 p.m. Eastern for the next 15 weeks. Although I will say, if that falls on, like, I know there's Thanksgiving coming up and whatnot, so there's a holiday. Obviously, we're going to do it that week. But barring holidays, we'll be doing this live every Friday at 1 p.m. Eastern. So
right, it'll take us to about the end of January. So you're going to have months, 15 weeks worth of great content and something to look forward to in digestible pieces.
And if you guys ever been a part of my training, guys, I give some of the best training. I'm not just saying that. This is from folks who attend my trainings. We make them fun. We make them lively. We have some humor in there. This is not dry stuff, and we teach the advanced stuff as well. So don't think this is just a dry training. We're gonna have a lot of fun on this one. So week number 1, this is what we're going to go over tomorrow. This is some pretty basic stuff. So may not necessarily be for you veterans. But that said, it is valuable, especially for you new folks or people who are new in the industry, or maybe you've never went through any formal training. Week number 1, we're going to go through basically a search industry overview, what search is, and really even just beyond search. I should say staffing, because contracting or staff augmentation, that really technically isn't search. It's search is more direct hire. But we're going to go into, I guess you can say, the recruitment industry overview, different types of recruitment services that you can offer, not just search. And we'll also talk about the process, because there's this business more than most other businesses is very process driven. It is step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4, and make $30,000, right? There's a few more steps in there too, but it's quite literally step by step by step by step by step. And when I was a rookie, one of the things that was drilled into me was this phrase: execute the program. If you're not sure what to do, execute the program. You got a script. If you're not sure how to react to this situation, execute the program. Just do whatever's in front of you and execute it. And
what's awesome about that, because like when I used to have recruiters working for me, the way I would train them is we kind of identified the primary sections of the recruiting life cycle, and we would spend time training on each of them each week. We would do role play. We'd work on each section. And even when I would train a new recruiter, I'd start with the beginning, have them get some level of mastery before they took on the next. That's why whether you're teaching someone in this industry or you're learning it, it's pretty straightforward to kind of wrap your head around one piece of the puzzle and then gradually master the steps that follow. Even though it might seem like it's very chaotic and we all say, oh, we all do it differently, it all falls into general buckets for sure.
And what's really cool about this session, David, right, is we get into the niche and mastering your marketplace, which is a topic that everyone's interested in, and really exciting opening session.
Oh yeah, and in fact, when it comes to the niche market master, so we'll be kind of covering some basics as far as the niche here, but in week number 2, we'll be diving even further into your niche or market mastery. And by the way, just so you know, I get the term market mastery for one of my mentors, the business, Jeff K. So I want to give him full credit for this one. His fingerprints are going to be all over this coming lesson here on week number 2, because this is where I learned it. We'll talk about the field methodology. We'll talk about how to define your niche. We'll talk about how to master your market, but we're also going to modernize it, right? The concept, because we'll also be talking about, and this is really, really interesting. I think you guys are going to want to be here for this one, even if you're a veteran, is because to give you some perspective, we have worked with close to 500 firms, and we trained thousands of recruiters. And I can tell you there are very common things that you should expect when it comes to how to define your niche, how big your niche should be, how many prospects are in your niche, how many candidates should be in your niche, as well as how to figure out how to define what the perfect size niche is for you. So we're going to be going over a lot of numbers, and we're also going to play into how many automations, because the size of your niche really depends on what kind of automations you want set up on your back end. We'll talk a lot about that. We'll also talk about some tools you can use to map your market, whether it be Seamless or Duck Soup or Zoom Info and all these other tools. So we'll also be touching on some tools there.
That'll be great too, for even if you're the super experienced, because if you think about it, if you try to pivot into another niche, I never say it right. If you try to pivot into another area, you got a new market, you got a map. Now you got to figure out how to refocus, whatever. So whether you're picking your first area to focus in or a new area to focus in, the same principles apply.
I would say niche,
like Frederick Nietzsche.
I say niche has a nice panache.
It's fancy. Yeah, if it sounds like French, it's fancy.
Always.
All right, and so week number 3, recruiting made easy. Well, I shouldn't say recruiting is always easy, but we're going to simplify it for you. How to recruit. We'll talk about what clients want in a candidate, so what to look for. If your client wants an accountant, well, they don't just want an accountant. There's lots of things that they're going to want that's not just listed in the job description. We'll talk about that. So what clients actually want, as well as what candidates want in the client. That's just as important as well. We'll talk about how to figure that out. We'll talk about some different kinds of what we call recruiting presentations, or in other words, how to recruit, how to pitch it, right? We'll even talk about some of the old school indirect techniques as well. We'll talk about how to create a recruiting presentation. We're going to dive into what candidates want. And candidates don't just want money. They do want money, don't get me wrong, but my first mentor in the business, her name is Lucy Wilson. She's years dead at this point, but she was old school battle axe recruiter when I first started back in like 25 some years ago. And she had been recruiting for 40 years prior to that. So she had been old school, like back when candidates used to pay her to find them a job. That's how old it was, or how old she was. And one of the most important things she told me was that if a candidate is only interested in money, they're going to break your heart. And that is so true. So we're going to talk about what motivates candidates, how to figure out what those motivations are, and how to tap into that, all right, beyond just the money. We'll talk about how to create recruiting campaigns. So that's different than a presentation, because the presentation is the pitch. The campaign is how do you go out and present the pitch to your candidates. And nowadays we have LinkedIn messaging, we have emails, we have email, we have the classic cold call, as well as things like job boards and posting on LinkedIn, etc. So lots of different ways to skin a cat, and we're going to go through the basics here. And lastly, handling objections. So when you're recruiting, you're going to come across some pretty common objections, right? There's not that many objections out there from candidates. Not on the market right now. I'm not looking. They're not paying enough. It's too far. Whatever those objections happen to be. So we'll talk about how to handle those objections. Neil, Chris, anything you want to add to week 3, or move on to week 4?
Nope.
I think we're pretty good.
Perfect. By the way, guys, if you guys see me drinking like this is not beer. This is a root beer, IBC. This is my little treat for the day. So just so you guys don't think I'm drinking on the job. All right. We have some good comments in here. Love you guys got to run. I'll be around. Thank you very much for sticking around. All right. So week 4, sourcing mastery. So we could put together the best recruiting presentations and the best recruiting campaigns and handle all the objections and yada, yada, yada. But if you can't find the people, then you are dead in the water. So we'll talk about some sourcing techniques, whether it be LinkedIn sourcing off of LinkedIn, how to get contact info, different tools you can use to get that, as well as, and this is kind of a lost art, so it's very valuable, how to get referrals. Because for some reason, well, I guess I know the reason actually, but nobody asks for referrals anymore. It's a lost art. when I was first started the business, we didn't have LinkedIn, we didn't have contact databases and all that. The only thing we could do is either ruse, which meaning call up a receptionist and pretend you're somebody else and try to get names, and you're writing them out as fast as you can, right? Or get referrals. And so it was drilled into our heads. Every person you talk to, ask for a referral. Get referrals all day long, right? So we'll talk about how to do that, because some of the best people that you're going to find are from referrals. And it's not just the fact that you can't find them on LinkedIn. You probably can, but what really helps is when you have when you refer it in, because there's so many recruiters out there, there's a lack of trust out there. So if a candidate's friend or colleague refers you over, it helps build that bridge. And so we'll talk about how to ask for referrals and some different techniques. So some of these last techniques that we'll bring up.
And
Right?
I was going to say, David, that was drilled into me. And as a manager, I would drill that in. It would be a matrix and a KPI that we would track. It's that important. And I'm amazed at people who use the tools such as LinkedIn and don't use the referral. They all sit next to someone amazing. Like-minded people are together. These A players that you find, they know someone in their old company. They're new. We're going to get into all that. And you got to do it. Get back to the basics.
It's crazy. There's some recruiters who've been doing this for years and have never asked for a single referral. How crazy is that?
Amazing.
Right? But look, I get it. It's LinkedIn. It's what it is. It's like if you're a young single guy and you're on Tinder and you're swiping right and swiping left. Well, maybe you don't need to go and walk up to the pretty girl at the bar. But I'll tell you what, if you could develop that skill set, your dating life will improve dramatically. So we're going to teach you the skill set on how to do those things, right? Not necessarily how to talk to the girl at the bar. That's a different training. But week number 5, the power interview. So obviously, when you attract candidates, you're going to want to qualify them, right? So how to screen them. So how to qualify candidates based on what your client's looking for, as well as what you've advised your client that they should be looking for. How to complete a CDS. So this is a CDS stands for candidate data sheet, right? It's in essence the form that you fill out when you talk to every single candidate, right? It's all about being process driven. And while it may seem boring, this is probably one of the most important lessons that we have on this. It's how to complete a good CDS. Red flags to watch for, right? For example, you talk to a candidate about the position, and they're super excited about it and yada, yada, yada. And then you simply ask, maybe it's towards the end of the year, and you say, well, are you getting any bonuses? Are you expecting any bonuses? You are. When are you supposed to get that bonus? Because they're supposed to get a $25,000 bonus in March, and it's now September, right? They may say they're interested, but I guarantee you, or most likely when it comes down to the offer stage, they'll say, I'll accept the offer, but I can't start until March. I want to make sure I get my bonus, right? It's those things.
And that's the stuff a lot of recruiters are afraid to ask because they want to kind of gloss over that. They're hoping a lot of times we're afraid to like bring up things that could be problems later. But the information that you collect at this stage is so critical to how everything else plays out, all the way up to including offer, counter offer, et cetera. That like this overlooking like little details at this point is going to really bite you in the ass later.
100%. I can't tell you how many deals I've lost by not looking out for red flags, not asking the hard questions. So we'll be talking about that, as well as setting expectations, right? This is also really critically important. It's something that most recruiters do not do, but it's so basic. When you talk to a candidate and you submit them, how do you set proper expectations? How do you let the candidate know that they're not the only game in town? Because the only candidate in process that you have, they're going to think they own you. They control the process, and you cannot let them think that. So we'll talk about how to set expectations with these candidates and your clients, for that matter, to make sure you have a much easier closing. Really important stuff. Week number 6, marketing made easy. Now, this is where I'm really excited about this one, because this is my wheelhouse. Because in my firm, we help deploy sales and marketing systems. That's all we do, right? We either train recruiters how to market and get clients, or we have a done-for-you system that we deploy in your firm. So I don't take a lot of the stuff that I do right now, plus a lot of old school basic stuff, right? Old school techniques. And we're talking about, well, first off, can I swat an employer? tied to marketing presentations, right? So how to develop a pitch, how to figure out your core differentiators, what works now, because what works now is not necessarily the same as what worked 5, 10, 15 years ago. So we're going to modernize this. How to create a marketing campaign. Again, just like with recruiting campaigns, now you've got LinkedIn messaging, in-mails, emails, you have direct mail. Of course, you have the classic cold call. Heck, we'll even talk about smoke signals. If smoke signals works, we'll talk about that. Whatever gets your presentation in front of these clients, whether you're presenting a candidate or whether you're presenting your general service or whatever happens to be, or maybe you're chasing a job lead, talk about how to put all that together, how to run it, as well as handling objections. And in this one, I'm going to teach you my famous positive K objection handling technique. I won't tell you what it is yet. Just know that is based off the positive K rapper from the 80s. That's right. Don't say anything more. I was going to leave it at that. Come to the training. You'll find out exactly how you fit the positive K rapper technique into your objection handling arsenal. That's going to be a fun one. All right. So week number 7, cold calling. Also one of my favorite classes. In fact, I just did a full 1.5 hour long training, or cold call training with Ben Mina's summit last week. So if anybody's interested in getting a copy of that training, Jaja, could you post I have a post in the Herc group. Could you take that and post the link to that post in here? Because if anybody wants the training, you basically have to comment that you want it, and then we'll send it to you. All right. But we'll talk about how the cold call flow, how that should work, how to flow from the opener to next steps. And by the way, I've got some of the best openers that open almost every single time. And it's not the hello, is this Neil Lubovitz? Hi, this is David Patterson with the Kineta Group. How are you today? Great. Well, the purpose of my call is we're not going to do that. All right, we're going to have some really fun openers that they're fun, light, and are great at pattern interrupts and that open 99% of the time. So if you're shaking your boots just even thinking about cold calling, this is the lesson that you want to attend. So how to go from the opener to next steps, which usually is setting a next call or maybe like a full sales call or what have you. How to close for the next call, as well as, handling objections, right? So we're gonna really hammer in on additional handling objections while you're on that cold call. Week number 8 is going to be how to take a world-class job order or search assignment or whatever you want to call it. Basically, when you get a client, how to make sure you're taking the right search assignment, how you're asking the right questions. We'll teach you how to qualify clients, what you need in a good client, because you don't want every piece of business that comes your way. That's a very fast way to get to the poorhouse. It's taking on every single client that comes your way, right? There's lots of shitty clients out there. We'll tell you how to avoid them. How to complete the job order form, similar to the CDS, right? It's very boring, but it's actually one of the most important pieces of the business. Red flags to watch out for. Right? There's certain red flags that clients have. We'll talk about what to watch out for, how to avoid them, what hard questions to ask, as Chris mentioned earlier. And just like with candidates, how to set proper expectations, right? Because just like when a candidate thinks they're the only game in town, they now think in their mind they control the process. Same thing happens with clients. If the client thinks that they're the only game in town for that candidate that they want, right? Now they think they control the process. And I got to tell you, clients and candidates are the worst at managing their own processes. It is up to you, the professional, to manage it successfully so both are happy and both come together. That's our role, not just to find people, but to actually make things happen. So we'll talk about how to set expectations so you can do that.
And real quick on that, just like, again, obviously there are parallels between that and the candidate steps, right? In both cases, I've found there's a lot of things that they're happy to tell you, but you have to know to ask. Like both candidates and prospective clients, they make a lot of assumptions. And I've often found that there's things that they'll share if you ask, but later on you're like, why didn't you tell me X, Y, Z? And they're like, I didn't think you needed to know that. I just thought you knew, like, because they don't know, right? Unless you tell them. So again, back to David's point about steering the process, like that's where the real professional comes in, is making sure to bring up all these things so that the client or the kid, a lot of times, again, they're not hiding anything from you most of the time. I found if you ask the questions, they usually answer them. But if you don't ask them, you're flying blind. So
exactly. Even if they give an answer you don't want to hear, it's actually a good answer, right?
Yeah. Tell me right now that your benefits are terrible, because then we'll figure out a plan and work around that. But don't let me find out later that your health insurance is $10,000 a month.
Exactly. By the way, so FYI, I just saw a comment from Luke. Luke, I'll make sure to get you that link to that train a little bit later today. I'll send you a LinkedIn message if we're connected. If not, I'll send you a connection request with a link. All right. All right, here we go. So next, week number 9, making the match. Right. This is pretty straightforward. Once you get a candidate, how to package them up, how to make them look real nice and pretty and shiny and attractive to the client. How different ways to submit the candidate, as well as how to make what's called matching calls. What's a matching call? Well, it's where you take the candidate, you call the client. This is old school stuff, and match them to the job order, not just submit the email. Okay.
Right.
So
and great nuggets for your newbies in particular, about how you don't just listen to them. I mean, my goodness, if you're submitting someone and you took this amazing job order, don't take no for an answer. Like, you don't submit 4 or 5 people. If you do, they need to interview all 4 or 5 people. If you're submitting 3, they don't pick the one they want to start with. So things like that we're going to really get into and permeate throughout the sessions.
100%. And deal number 10. Now I get this term again. Give Jeff K, one of my mentors, one of my best mentors, credit. He calls this deal running, and I love the way he puts it. But basically, it's how to manage the process between the time you submit the candidate until the time the candidate steps onto the client's job site after accepting an offer and actually starting. And actually, you can do even beyond that, because technically you still got to manage the process until you get paid, and technically beyond that until your guarantee period passes. So we're going to talk about some of the most important parts of the deal running process. Here is going to be prepping and debriefing, meaning how to prep your candidates, not only when you first talk to them, but most primarily when they go in for their interviews, right? How to prep the candidates, how to prep your clients, as well as how to properly debrief a candidate and how to properly debrief a client. Now, one thing I've noticed, and Neil, Chris, maybe you guys can back me up on this, or feel free to disagree with me, but although I know I'm right, but it seems like your average recruiter has no problem prepping candidates. But man, have you noticed that very few recruiters, except for like the really good ones, like the Rich Rosens of the world, the ones who bill a lot, but most recruiters don't prep clients at all. Have you ever noticed that?
Yeah. And it's so important to put them from a high, when we get into some advanced selling techniques, to put them in a position where they need to work for the candidate and know this person's in demand and that they need to sell to them the same way and let them talk. Absolutely.
Another thing that differentiates, like you pointed out, David, the real professionals and the work, the kind of professionals that a company wants to pay a high fee to and use over and over again is the person who helps guide them through the process and helps make it happen. So yeah, if you're only coaching the candidate and prepping them, but you're not giving the same service to your client to help that deal come together and help them put their best foot forward and help them have the best shot at this talent, like, you're missing half the equation, and you're really counting on a lot of luck. Versus, like, if you mentor them through this and the deal closes, like they're as happy to make that hire as you are to bill that invoice, and they'll use you again and again because they think you're amazing. But again, one of those things that if you don't bring it up, the client won't, because they don't know any better. So it's on you to do that.
100%. And I'll tell you what, it's really a mindset thing in a lot of ways, because for most recruiters, the client's paying you, so the client's on a pedestal. And who are you lowly, dirty, scummy recruiter, scum of the earth, to tell this pristine client
We
how
put
to
ourselves
like
down. Yeah.
Yeah, keep in mind, a good recruiter makes much more money than their clients. Okay. So let that maybe ease your mind a little bit. You have value, and your value isn't just finding candidates. The real value is securing those candidates. How do you secure them? Well, you know the process. You do, again, if you hire a plumber, when the plumber gets there, are you going to tell your plumber how to do their job? No, they're a freaking plumber. Like, they know their job. They're going to tell
You're going to answer their
you.
questions. If that plumber asks you where certain things are, how old something is, tell me about this, tell me about that, you're not going to not answer their questions.
Exactly. That's what you're
Are
paying them
you
for,
saying
right?
recruiters are lower on the totem pole than plumbers?
In some cases, yes, but
Yeah.
but listen, but a lot of times recruiters think their job is just to find people, but we're deal makers, right?
Yeah.
We make stuff come together. We're people that, we're finding someone as part of it, but shepherding something from start to finish and making it happen for your clients is really what you're getting paid for.
Shepherding's a great word. I love that for it. Yeah.
Yeah, or also like herding cats.
That too.
Yeah.
We'll combine it. Shepherding cats. There you go.
Yeah, exactly. Now also we'll talk about the other piece of deal running is, of course, closing the deal. So closing the deal. Well, how do you do that? So we'll talk about how to prep for the close, and if you've done a good job prepping your client and candidate and debriefing your client and candidate, then prepping for the close should be a breeze if you follow the process. Okay. If you don't follow the process, then you're going to have a tough time. So if you're on high closing ratio, we'll tell you how to prep for the close. We'll talk to you about how to check references, when to check, what to ask, et cetera, et cetera. Talk about the closing call, the dreaded closing call. It's so exciting, yet so nerve-wracking, meaning you're verbally presenting the offer to a candidate. You've got to get them to say yes. Now, if you do a good job prepping for the close, then the closing call should be a piece of cake, right? It should be a foregone conclusion. But for most recruiters, I don't know about most, but for a lot of recruiters, they're crossing their fingers, maybe even crossing their toes, thinking about how they really want to pay their mortgage this month. Please take the job. Please take the job. Please. And they're just hoping and praying. That's not a good way to do business. So
No,
I'll
and
talk
you know
to you.
what, David, we'll get into the stuff that we see all over the Facebook groups about pre-closing, about being able to accept on behalf of others. When can you? When shouldn't you? Planting seeds for it. All those wonderful nuggets.
Oh yeah, and also resignation training for all of those of you who have been burned by counteroffers. We've all been there. We've all been there. Well, we're going to teach you how to train your candidates the proper way to resign, how to deal with the emotions, how to deal with an angry boss, how to deal with all that kind of stuff. So we'll talk about how you can prep your candidates for when they resign. Because just because they said yes to your offer, your client's offer, doesn't mean they're actually starting the job, right?
And how many of you say, like, what do you think is going to happen when you walk into your boss's office and get the notice? How do you think they'll respond, et cetera, et cetera? Like, a lot of us don't do that. I know for a long time I didn't do it, but man, goes a lot better when you do bring that up. Again, it's the stuff that we're sometimes afraid to bring up, but we need to bring up.
Yep. The counteroffer prep will all be in here. All that fun stuff.
Exactly. All right. Week 12. So week 12 is one of those lessons where not quite as fancy as the other ones, but this is very, very important. Basically how to plan, how to do monthly planning, weekly planning, daily planning, even quarterly planning, which I don't have listed here, but we'll cover that as well as time management, how to manage your time. You know, as a recruiter, you are the CEO and chief bottle washer and everything in between, right? Even if you work for another company, you still have to do so many things, and it's hard to keep track. You've got to try to balance your day versus marketing versus recruiting versus deal running versus everything else and planning and admin, et cetera. How do you manage it all, as well as how to manage just your overall work-life balance? Because for many of us, right, our work kind of bleeds into our personal life, and our personal life bleeds into work. So we'll talk about that in that session. So it should be a good one. Don't miss it. Next, we have advanced selling. This is where Neil's going to sink his teeth into it, because he wants to talk about emotional selling and as well as hypnotic selling. Now, I don't mean hypnotic selling like he's going to hypnotize me, make me walk like a chicken. But actually, Neil, why don't you take this one, because this really is your baby here.
I mean, it's, emotional selling is everything's rooted on emotion, and we teach how do you get to the root of it? How do you really utilize it? What are some great techniques? And hypnotic selling is really the key of power influence. What are the main elements? And you've heard a lot of these, but we put them all together. People want what other people want. We talk about things like that and how you put that into the prep and the brief and all that sort of stuff. How people like when there's competition. How people are, when they listen to ranges and stuff, they go to the top of the range. All sorts of wonderful, wonderful items to help you weave these into all of those other areas, which is why this is coming at the end.
And the thing is, with the emotional component, I've found it works the best when you're dealing with someone who is actually in a position to make a decision, right? So if the emotional attachment there is there, if the need's there, if the pain's there, but if you're dealing with someone who's an intermediary or is disconnected from the problem or is HR and they're whatever, it's not going to not work, but it's going to be particularly powerful when it's the person who is the real decision maker, in my experience.
Yeah,
exactly. In fact, I'll use a line from
too. This is selling to candidates to get them to want to accept the job. So all these techniques will show you specific examples and where they fit in.
And speaking of that, speaking of what you mentioned earlier, Chris, about selling to the right person, JFK has this really great line. I'm butchering it, but it's something to the effect of, it's really easy for a car salesman to sell a 17-year-old a brand new Corvette, but the trick is selling the dad, the decision maker who's got the pocketbook, right? And that makes sense. We'll talk to you about how to do that. Week number 14 going to be moving best contingency. So this is a great one. And so Neil and I have a couple of different sort of approaches to this. We'll discuss both. You'll get a couple of different flavors on this. But in essence, like I'll be talking about how to structure a higher level search. I like to use a productized method, how to make your service almost like a product and have some different levels. It gives your client a little bit of choice, as well as what levers that you can use to get them into what I like to call your higher level search, whether it's exclusivity, engage, which is they paid a deposit, or maybe fully retained, or whatever that happens to be. So we're going to be pretty excited about that one.
That's going to be fun to talk about too, because like that mindset shift, when I went from 15 years of all contingency and I spent the last 5 doing mostly engaged, almost entirely engaged or exclusive contingency, shifting your mind, like, you know why it works for you as a recruiter, but like it's shifting your mindset to being able to present to that potential client why this works for them and why this makes the most sense for them, and putting yourself in their shoes. It's a bit of a mental shift, but like once you get there, it's really powerful.
Exactly. And I will say this, I developed a lot of these techniques from my years working in the SAP industry, which is basically IT, for those folks who don't know. It's like higher level IT. And in IT, it's very hard to move past contingency because there's so much competition and the clients don't see the value in using somebody on an engaged or retained basis. And so one of the things that always bothered me was I was trained on how to get retained work was to basically hold firm, hold the line, know my worth, and say, look, if you want to buy my time, I'm kind of paraphrasing here. And it never worked because clients would always say, well, whatever, okay, I'll go with the other recruiter. Right? There's a dozen knocking down my door right now that all seem good, just as good as you. They all have track records and blah, 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 blah. Why should I pay you a deposit? It's risky. And so I had to develop some methods, techniques to actually make it make sense for the client. So there's a lot of education involved as well with this, more of a nuanced approach, but it works well. It's not necessarily for those recruiters who already work retained, who work at levels where clients are already looking to do retained. That's different. If you have a client that's looking to hire in a C-suite individual, and they're looking at you and 3 other retained firms, that's a different way to sell retained than you're talking to a client that wants to work contingency, and you got to try to convince them to work retained. It's a whole different animal, and we'll be talking about that, right? Lastly, and Neil, let you take the lead on this one, building recurring income through staffing. Neil, tell us about this one.
So obviously we'll get into types of staffing, but what everyone wants to know is, how do I do it? How do I do it? I know I want to get a piece of this action. How, as a search recruiter, direct hire, do I sell this? And frankly, if you don't want to wait to week 15 to some point in January, early February to see this, go to the NAPS conference. It's my speech that I'm having on the first day. Great content. The next one is, well, how do you maximize your profit on the contingent staffing side of the business. And this is all techniques, bad habits that people have. How do you price it? How do you really come up with a bill rate and a pay rate? How do you price temp to perm deals when you get them? And that's a lot of questions that I often get from search recruiters.
And
one second, Chris, then I'm done and I'll turn it to you. On the same note, if you want a recording of my session at the recent Ben Mena conference, gross margin maximization, it's in the Syndicate. Just scroll down to the boss area. You'll see webinar gross margin maximization. Join it and it'll play right there. No need to sign up or do anything else. And it's a great 50-minute session. Sorry, Chris.
No, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I had a company for 10 years. One of the things we did was temp staffing, and we did quite a bit of it. It was mostly technology professionals. And I learned the hard way through trial and error how to price, how your margin, what your margins actually were versus what you think they are.
Right. Like cost, yeah.
Yeah, like your real cost, especially when you factor in, and I'm not trying to go over a lesson real, but like when you factor in like how long a particular client takes to pay, and now you're floating that money for longer, et cetera, et cetera. So there's all these variables going to play beyond just like bill rate, pay rate, and I think I know what percent my burden rate is, right? And then getting away from a markup, being tied to a markup percentage, and instead pricing differently, right? Like not being chained to like, oh, the customer's like, oh, you know what I mean? Like you explain it better, Neil, because you've been doing it for longer. But if you're stuck in like a markup percentage type of situation, you're kind of locked in versus you should be pricing this like based on the consultant, based on the, whatever. So that's some really important stuff. And again, I learned a lot of expensive lessons along those 10 years and at times I thought I was making a lot more money than it turns out I really was actually hitting the bank account, because you were just looking at like raw margins. And there were times we could have been charging more and we left money on the table for sure.
All right. 100%. And that's foundations.
That's foundations, guys. Pretty excited. So all you guys got to do then, if you want to get a piece of that sweet action, as Neil likes to say, all you got to do is go to the Syndicate, so thesyndicate.chat. It's completely free. And again, remember, we have over 50 agreements. We have over 100 forms. We have tons of free training already in there. We have a community.
50 ebooks. Amazing.
Ebooks. Yeah, actually, we're talking like lead magnet, like little chintzy ebooks. We're talking like real, like actual like books on selling and persuasion in there. The PDFs that you could download instead of buying on Amazon, and memes. So for those folks who just like to check out some white hot recruiting memes, we get tons of those as well. So we have something for everybody. It's quite literally like Narnia. You walk into the wardrobe, and there's a whole magical land that you can explore. All right.
So check out the witch, and that's the wardrobe. Got it.
Yep.
That's right. That's right.
Thank you.
I won't say who's the lion and who's the witch. You guys can figure that out.
I think it's obvious. I'll leave it at that.
So go to the syndicate.chat. We'll be going live in there tomorrow at 1 p.m. Eastern. And with that said, folks, peace out. See you there. Thank you, everybody. Bye, folks.